Here's one index of community social capital that's quite widely used. It's, I believe he's a political scientist, Putnam, and he identified, I think it's 14. I better check, do my sums quickly. Yeah, I think it's 14 elements. And he was saying that if you measure each of these things, you'll have a good idea of the extent of community social capital. Now, some of these things are characteristics of the community. So for example, this is back to our, how many temples have you got in Tokyo or something? Civic or social organizations, possibly religious organizations, per 1,000 population. Or another one, number of non-profit organizations per 1,000 population. Or, and it seems a bit of a jump, turnout in presidential elections. But you can see how you could characterize a community with one of these measures. So, in principle, in Kyoto, we could ask how many non-profit organizations are there, and we could divide by the overall population, and we get an estimate per 1,000. You could do the same for Nagasaki, do the same for, I'll run out of Japanese cities in a minute, Yokohama or something. You could do that calculation. So you could see that you could certainly, it's something measurable, you could use it to characterize a particular locality. Similarly, in principle, I guess, you could say what the turnout, you don't have presidential elections, Putnam's writing in the US context, you have prime ministers, I guess. It is a prime minister. My woeful ignorance of Japanese politics. I saw him on television this morning. He was having to interact with President Trump. Anyway, turnout in presidential elections. So was the turnout 45% or was it 65%? So if it's 65%, is that twice as much social capital as 32.5%? So those are characteristics of the community. Another set of his elements in his index are to do with the individual's participation. And so the question would be, for an individual, did they attend any public meetings in the past year? Have they served on the committee of a local organisation? If they did attend club meetings, if they're a member of some club, how many did they go to? And so on. How many times in the last year did the individual volunteer their services? Or even, last one in that particular section, the mean number of times the person entertained at home in the last year. Now, I've got a very small flat, and it makes entertaining at home rather difficult. So, have I got less social capital because I've got such a small flat? Maybe. And then the final one, I've in that first column, it's my description, so I'm sorry, whoop, keep pressing the wrong one. Characteristics of the community, individual participation. Call this one individuals' beliefs. The bottom two probably are beliefs. I'm not sure if the first one's a belief. Individuals are asked, do they agree with the statement, I spend a lot of time visiting friends? And the idea being, if you strongly agree with that, that's more social capital than if you disagree or strongly disagree. Really, the most common measure, I'll come to you in a second, is about trust. And the question that's asked again and again in lots of national surveys in lots of countries is, do you agree with the statement, most people can be trusted?
I try to use this social capital scale to a group of people with disabilities. And I consulted with a person with told me that he has attended so many meetings over the internet.
Yeah, that's a good point. This has evolved really, particularly in the 90s into early 2000s, at a time when internet was very young. It's strange, I can't remember when I first sent an email. I just don't know. I must have been quite excited. Will this work? Things have changed, and so I think I think you raised two issues there, really. I mean, one is the technology is changing, and now I can't imagine an up-to-date list is going to have to sort of Facebook, etc., or its equivalent. It's got to recognise that there's many, many ways of participating, and it's argued that maybe in certain elections in recent years, social media has played a much bigger role than all the traditional forms of political engagement. The other thing I think you raise is the issue, I mean, for disability is an interesting question. To what extent are some of these questions almost sort of, not discriminatory, but they sort of, you have to calibrate. Does somebody identify with belonging to a disability group or not? And then, if you're going to ask the same questions, the answers mean a different thing. Because possibly the effort involved, not internet, but other forms of participation, for someone belonging to a disability group, might be hugely greater than someone not. And so if you then just treat it 3 times per year and you just don't calibrate, you're understating or misstating what it represents in terms possibly of participation in social capital.
So I have an answer to this person who is blind, whether meeting someone on a virtual world is the same as meeting in person. So what would be your suggestion?
Well, there's definitely evidence that many people are more willing to answer questions about themselves on the telephone or maybe give information on the internet compared to if they've got somebody in front of them. Somehow they're just willing to disclose more because of the sort of anonymity. Now, does that mean that participation in online meetings is different from participation in a face-to-face meeting? It probably does. Does it mean it's less social capital? I'm not sure. I mean, I guess on an internet meeting, you're potentially meeting lots more people. Because face-to-face, there's only so many people can sort of take part in that conversation, but online, many, many more. So I don't know the answer. I think my answer is it's different, but I'm not sure in what way.
I think he was asking for the specific item that is serving as an officer. So that the group is selected. It's not open for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But because of their disabilities, meeting face to face became is not easy. So they decided to have a office meeting on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked me if meeting with other officers on the virtual world is the same as meeting on face-to-face basis. So I have an answer to him this question.
Well, I don't know the answer. I'm willing to say I can see it's different, I think, but I'm not sure in what ways it's different.
Because the number could vary. Say, yes, you can count virtual meeting as a meeting.
Yes. Oh, yes, you can get different numbers, definitely. I mean, one view of it might be, oh, well, internet meeting is that much easier, so they don't count as highly. That might be a view. But then the other side of it is this issue of calibration that I was suggesting, that for somebody, a member of a disability group, you've got to do the calibration the other direction. Because participation might be harder, one meeting isn't equivalent one-to-one. So I think it goes in both directions. So interesting question. I don't know the answer to it. So, but this is a widely used one. I have difficulty answering some of them. Most people can be trusted. In what way am I trusting these people? Am I trusting them to not steal from me? Am I trusting them, if I marry them, they won't cheat on me? By the way, that choice is just nothing, not non-personal. You know, I'm trusting them that they won't take advantage of me in any way. What does it mean to say I trust someone? Most people are honest. Well, how honest does somebody have to be honest? Does this mean 100% honest? So I think it's all quite problematic, some of these.